Ethos of Silence.
A veteran podcast aims to amplify the voices of veterans, creating a safe space for authentic conversations about their experiences, challenges, and triumphs. We seek to break the stigma surrounding mental health and foster community support, resilience, and understanding. Through storytelling, expert insights, and candid discussions, we strive to inspire healing, promote awareness, and empower veterans on their journeys.
Welcome. I mean, it is what it is. You kind of pick your poison and go with it. So, name of the podcast is Ethos of Silence. So who I have sitting here with me today?
Terry Sauls. I was in the United States Army from 2000 to 2010. And let's see, I served overseas, Iraq, Afghanistan. I traveled a lot. I was even stationed in Qatar for a little bit.
Okay.
So it was funny. I was talking to your buddy earlier, and basically what happened was in high school, I come from a kind of a poor background.
Okay.
So in high school, my dad was like, hey, you got to find a way to pay for school, and
Trying to think of paying for college, you mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I always wanted to go to school for like business or law or something like that. So, but my sophomore year of high school, I worked for a guy who did decorative concrete. And ended up becoming business partners with him. So I said, you know what? Instead of going to active duty, I'm going to join the Army Reserves. That way I'm here just in case you ever go to war.
Okay.
I'm trained up, and I can go to school, and I have this business in my back pocket and all that. So everything's going to work out good. Well, I joined the Army in 2000.
Okay.
So 2001, I go to basic training. In June, I go to Fort Leonard Wood. And it was kind of strange. So I had to go to a combat engineer basic training unit, even though I was a mechanic. I was 6'3" whiskey. But they mixed us all in with like plumbers, intel guys. There was a whole bunch of like random MOSs, right?
Okay, so, sounds like the Army's just magically trying to try some shit right now.
Oh yeah. And they even had five females with a female drill sergeant. And I want to say after like the first few weeks, all of them are gone because the combat engineer, senior drill sergeant, he did not want females in his unit. It was like disrespectful. So we graduate and found out we're the last graduating class before 9/11 hit.
Oh.
So here I am in Maryland going to this maintenance school at a place called Edgewood, and 80% of the base was like off limits. Okay, and we didn't know why. They didn't tell us. They didn't tell us why. They said, here's your haircut, here's your PX, here's the school, here's your barracks, dining facility, but you cannot go past this road. So we're like, what the hell? Like we didn't know what was going on, right? So 9/11 happens, and one of the planes were still in the air. So they marched us off from the schoolhouse into this beautiful like theater. Stadium seating and all that, so we're all sitting in here, and the base commander comes over, and he's like, yeah, just let you know, there's a plane still in the air. We don't know if it's going to hit us or not. And one of the privates were like, well, why would they hit us? It's kind of stupid, but Colonel's like, well, this is where the military produces chemical weapons. And we're like, what? Like, that's what's going on.
Oh, that's why we're not supposed to cross the fucking road,
Yeah,
huh?
right? Yeah, that's why we're not supposed to cross the road. So I'm like, what the shit, man? So then I found out that they work with Fort Detrick and all that. The military's, I guess, scientific part.
Yeah.
So fast forward. I come home from AIT. I go back to Louisiana, and January. So I graduated, I think, in like October, November. So January, I started college at Southeastern in Hammond, Louisiana.
Okay.
So I'm about 3/4 of the way through school, and I get deployment orders. And it says, amount of time, undetermined, and all that kind of stuff. It's my first set of papers. So at the time, they didn't tell me exactly.
Yeah, they show up in the mailbox. You walk out to the mailbox, and all of a sudden you're deploying.
Yeah. So they were like, get ready. You have like a few weeks, whatever, get your stuff together. So this girl I'm dating at the time, usually I don't date blondes. My sister was a blonde. She's kind of mean. So
I got a thing for blondes.
Oh, man, I tell you, I stuck with brunettes after my sister. She was a complete, oh, my God, she was horrible. But this girl was, like, real banging. Like, she was real hot.
Okay.
So I'm talking to her, and I said, look, we just started dating, so how about we put our relationship on hold, until I get back. No, I'm going to stay with you. So she convinced me to stay with her. So, and that comes into play later. So next thing I get my orders.
Like a good comedian, you're setting up the joke. Got it.
Yeah. So I get these orders to go to a place called Seagullville, Texas.
Seagullville, huh?
Yeah, it's like where some big command is, this reserve command. They had the medical, and they had maintenance, they had combat engineers. So I get assigned to this combat engineer, and now they called me. Like, they put me on order. So I go in and report to this captain, and he starts cursing me out. He's like, you're wasting my effing time. And I said, sir, I don't understand what you're talking about. He goes, well, you're a 63 whiskey, and your MOS just got consolidated to a 63 Bravo. And I was like, well, I didn't know that. And he's like, you're wasting my time. Get out of here. So I leave, and I call my reserve command, and I said, hey, they're sending me home. Oh, you're not coming home. So then I waited 2 days there, and they assigned me to another unit at the place. It was a medical unit. So I said, okay. So now I'm deploying with this medical unit. Now here I am as a mechanic. So we go to Fort Sam, Houston, because Fort Hood was too booked up with all these, I guess, units deploying. So we're like one of the first units there at Fort Sam to train up. We had to go to Fort Bliss and shoot at the range. Well, this full-bird colonel sees that he was already overseas. He wanted us to deploy really quick. So he waived all this stuff. He waived like convoy training. He's like, you're not gonna need any of that. So he waived all this stuff that we started to do weapons qual and all that, and with our mask and everything. So we do all this extra little training stuff, get all our shots and get all our wills and all that stuff done.
Right.
So we go overseas and found out that it's a medical unit that not only ships supplies, but they ship narcotics, they ship anthrax vaccines, they ship all this stuff throughout Afghanistan.
Okay.
Afghanistan, Iraq, and Africa. So I'm working for this guy. We're packing up stuff. I'm working for a warrant officer. Now, this reservist has been in since Vietnam.
Okay.
His problem was he was so crazy. He walked around, it looked like General Patton. He had these pearl handle pistols from Texas. He was from Texas. And he got yelled at all the time for wearing these damn pistols on the side, because he looked like a cowboy. So anyway, they told him, basically the guy was nuts. So basically they ended up sending him home. Well, I worked with him directly, so they made me take his position.
Yeah.
It was all like creative positions, because the war was amping up like so quickly. So I ended up becoming the NCOIC of transportation for that medical unit, for this big medical supply place.
So what rank are you when you're now NCOIC over a big supply shit?
E6. I was an E6.
Okay.
So, and it was supposed to be kind of like a temporary gig.
Yeah.
So another officer came in from Fort Detrick. Well, they sent an officer in, but he wanted to do something totally different. So anyway, I stayed in this position. So my job was when we had the big anthrax push at the time, because some soldier was suing through the Supreme Court about us not, military can't make us take anthrax and all that. So President Bush was trying to make us push it out as soon as possible, to kind of get it all out to the different units and stuff. Well, we actually got emails at the time where the temp tail readings from flying from Fort Detrick to where we were, they got really hot. So I told my colonel, told the command, I said, hey, look, I don't think we could ship this stuff out. It's 10,000 vials. We can't ship this out because it went so high up, and we have no back research on this. She made all kind of calls, and they came back a few days later, and they said, no, ship them out. We're in a hurry, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, this might cause some problems. So when we babysit all this stuff for all these deliveries, we ended up having some soldiers that got these vaccines. And even though the CDC and everybody denies it, the VA denies it, but a lot of these soldiers had a lot of adverse effects. We had people coming with real bad migraines, headaches, bleeding at the injection spot, all these problems. So it was a bad situation. But it was interesting though. I did get to travel. Certain missions, we call them palletized missions. We used to travel all over the country and the different bases and everything, and it was very interesting. One of the things I do remember at the time that when we flew in from Fort Sam, Houston, we took a Miami airplane. We took it from Fort Hood to Maine to Iceland to Germany, and then from Germany we flew into Iraq. And I asked him, and the captain that we landed, he said, "I bet y'all are wondering why y'all flying a commercial aircraft."
Yeah.
It's the military, because we all thought we were going to Kuwait.
Yeah.
And he said, "No." He said, I guess the enemy would shoot at military aircraft. So, but commercial planes they don't shoot at. And I was like, what the shit? I was like, sound like we're like an experiment here.
Right.
But anyway, everything worked out fine. And after that, everybody started kind of flying through Kuwait and convoying up. But it felt like we were like an experiment during that time. But it was a very interesting time. So I was supposed to be there for 12 months. So here I am about 10 months into my deployment, working almost at the 11th month, and I get a thing called a COTAT extension. And I'm like, what is this? So it's called a continuation of tour of active duty.
Wow. And
it was 4 of us that got it. And one other girl was like a biomed, calibrated medical equipment. She was like a genius, She was a genius. Letitia Malone was her name. And so they extended us for an extra 9 months. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. So after 14 months of being over there, I'd sit at my laptop in the morning and my hands would just shake. It's like my nerves were just so bad, Yeah. It's like, man, how do they want us to stay like this? This is just insane. So I found out, and I'm sure some other soldiers will admit to this now, since they won't get in trouble for it, but the Army had this policy, so they gave you 2 weeks leave. Your leave didn't start until you hit the States, okay? So when they told us when they were flying us out of Qatar at the time, and afterwards they made everybody fly through Kuwait, I think because of this reason. So we went to Qatar, to the RSync command, and they paid for us to fly Qatar Airways to Heathrow in London, and I think we flew like American Airlines or something like that, or British Airways, whatever it was, back home. Well, we flew to Greece, and they told us, they said, don't get off the plane for any reason. If they want somebody to get off because they have too many people, don't volunteer, don't get off the plane. Well, here I am thinking, well, I'm burnt out, and I need some time off. So they said, can anybody get off the plane? I was like, yeah, I'll get off, and I'll volunteer to get off. And they were like, okay, but they didn't even know I was a soldier.
Yeah. So
I get off, hanging out in Greece, stayed there for about 4 or 5 days. I go back to the airport, and they're like freaking out. They're like, dude, we've been trying to find you. We didn't know what was going on. I said, well, this thing didn't have a date on it, So anyway, I flew back. When I landed in Chicago, I got my butt chewed. They had the Army waiting there. They were looking for me. They were like, dude, where you been? And I was like, oh, they kicked me off the plane. I had to wait. I'll let you know, played it off. So I got a few extra days of leave and got to hang out in Greece a little bit. But I definitely got my ass chewed, not only by that guy, but when I came back to country, my commander just tore into me because he said I messed everybody else's leave up,
Yeah, you mess up everybody else's rotation.
And I didn't even think of that part of it. But so anyway, I come home on leave, visit my sister in Miami, fell in love with some girl.
There you go.
Beautiful girl, man. I tell you, the best personality in the world. Her name was Autumn. Beautiful girl. So I go back overseas. I do my deployment. Well, a few weeks before I was supposed to come home, I got injured overseas. I had a back injury real bad. So I come home, go to Fort Sam Houston to demobilize. Now, my unit has already pretty much come back. Remember, I got extended with a few other people.
Yeah.
So they send me back to Fort Sam, and I'm demobilizing, and they're going over my DD-214 information. They were like, look, you got all this terminal leave, and you're in the reserve, so we're just going to send you back to your reserve unit, and they're going to take care of you. I said, okay. Well, I didn't know any better. So I go back to my reserve unit, and here I am on an arm crutch, and they're like, yeah, we don't have a hospital here. We can't take care of you. And I said, well, hold on. They told me you were going to take care of me. Well, since I was overseas during Hurricane Katrina, they extended me for a year on reserve orders so I can, get my affairs in order and stuff like that. And so during that time, instead of getting my affairs in order, they put me in charge of funeral details. So here I am, burnt out doing funeral details. And so I'm at this one funeral about 6 months into it, and this major, this officer dressed in a major uniform, he come over and talked to me, asked me what happened. I told him what happened. He goes, well, is the VA taking care of you? And I was like, well, what's the VA?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, man, he goes, I work at the clinic here at Hammond. You need to come see me Monday, and I'll get you registered to take care of your health. I didn't even know anything about it.
Right.
Didn't know anything about it. So I show up on Monday. He registered me for the VA, and then I found out about the compensation part. So I filed for compensation with all my medical records, and they denied me. And I was like, how the hell are they going to deny me?
How are you going to deny me? I'm still yeah.
Yeah, I'm on these orders, but I had my injury reports from overseas for the clinic and all that, from the TMC. And but they denied me, and I found out I didn't file the right forms, okay? Now, I didn't have anybody coaching me on what to file. It's kind of like what I found, right?
Oh, yeah, I know.
So I spent about 6 months studying the Code of Federal Regulations for VA compensation. And I found out I filed the wrong forms. I wasn't submitting the right wording, I guess. And the forms I submitted weren't really well detailed on what happened. So anyway, ever since then, I promised myself I'm going to help every veteran I can, with
That's
the VA.
Awesome.
Yeah, with the VA claims. And I still do it to today. I mean, I help people all over the country. People call me from all over trying to get help. And it's not that I'm a certified person. What I do is I help them get their records together. And then once I get them all in order and explain to them how to fill out the forms, they put together a packet. They'll tell them to go see a veteran service officer. Yeah. To kind of verify it, and stuff like that, because I'm not certified to approve it for them. But no, it was a very interesting career. So then during that time, I wrote my congressman, and I said, hey, they told me, somebody at the unit told me I need to be put in a warrior transition unit. Which was
is that in Louisiana? You were a Louisiana congressman? Were you in a different state?
He was a congressman at the time. His name was David Vitter, but now he's a senator. He was a senator after that. So I wrote him. And he says, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, I want you to write this reserve command and tell them to put me back on active duty so I can get health care. So instead of being like this lighthearted, whatever, like me getting back on active duty and getting health care, the reserve command, the 143rd Command, they decided to investigate me. So what they do is they call the safety guy, whatever, at Bagram, and they were like, hey, did this guy get hurt? And they were like, no, we don't have no record of him on my books. I had nothing to do with this guy. I had all my medical records, So anyway, they tried to do this investigation. They kept extending my orders. Okay, so at this point, I'm at a 6 and 2 contract for the reserve, 6 years and 2 years inactive. At this year, I'm I think I'm 8.5 years in. Well, they keep extending me because they kept dragging out this damn investigation. Yeah. So yeah, but they're making me look like a criminal. Yeah. Like I did something wrong. So finally, at the end of it, the Congress office contacted me and said, yeah, we got our findings. They said, yeah, the LOD, because I had an LOD and everything, line of duty, had all that. So they said, yeah, everything's legit, but our findings is they should have put you in a warrior transition unit. And I said, cool. I was like, well, so when do I go? And he's like, no, you don't get to go. That's just our findings. You should have been put in one. And I was like, man, this is crazy. So what the heck?
So you find out I've been treated wrong, but you're not going to treat me right now?
That's right. So then I started asking about getting med boarded.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. So, and I mean, it's kind of sad to admit. So I'm still extended during this time because the investigation's just rolling up, but I'm still I have another month left on these orders. They put me on these extension orders. So I had this PTSD. I got real drunk. I drank like a half a bottle, maybe a 3/4 bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
And I kind of had this episode. And so anyway, I called the helpline, crisis line. The crisis line sends people. They put me in the VA hospital in Jackson, Mississippi. That's the only place I had a bed. Just so happens, the head doctor at Jackson VA was the battalion commander for this 143rd Command that was investigating me. So he came and talked to me, and he says, look, don't worry, we're going to take care of you and all this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking, cool, finally I'm going to get my med board. Well, he pulled out this sheet of paper that I have, and it says I need a PEB and an MEB, I need to get med boarded. So I got the form from him. He signed it saying, I don't know if he was ordering it or whatever, but so I showed him the sign, go back to my unit. I showed it to him, told him where I just was in this, this hospital lockup for 2 weeks. And they said, oh, yeah, we're not doing nothing with that. So I didn't get med boarded. I didn't get any of that stuff. So now I found out that I can go back and possibly, try to contest it for the betterment of the Army or whatever they said, whatever, to make it right. It's going to cost me $3,000 to get an attorney to try to get med boarded. But they're like, well, why do you want to get med boarded? And I said, well, my daughter's autistic. Maybe she can get some additional health benefits out of it, or maybe I get some retirement out of it or something. Yeah. But, it's just, and then I found out that there was thousands of us this happened to, reservists and National Guardmen coming back injured, and they were just releasing us on terminal orders without actually taking care of us. And I just thought that was crazy. I just thought that was really a shame because they never went back and they never corrected it. I really thought that was a shame. But so anyway, so on the 6-2 contract I signed up for in 2000, I ended up staying in almost 10 years. So I ended up staying in almost 10 years, on 9.5 years on this contract. Okay. And recently, about a week ago, the VA announced that the Supreme Court decided if you did more than one enlistment contract, you should get more Montgomery GI Bill benefits, especially if you had to switch from Montgomery GI to post 9/11, how they shouldn't have done that. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I spent 9.5 years in, I wonder if that's going to count. But
for anything, yeah.
I doubt it, and that's the sad part. Because here it is. Sometimes you see some knucklehead get a sprain and get medical boarded for it. And then you get somebody that's legit injured, and they're like, yeah, we're not med boarded. They don't even care, So, but my military career was very interesting, though. It really was. I got a secondary field promotion. So that way I went from E5 to E6 overseas in a secondary zone. So I was able to get promoted faster. So I thought that was really cool. But in fact, that lieutenant colonel I was over me overseas, Michael O'Gwen, he ended up coming out to be a general.
Okay.
Yeah, he turned. I think it was a 2-star when he got out. So he was over the medical command, in the end. But really smart guy. He was a genius. But it was just funny. So here I am signing up as a mechanic, and then ended up doing all this NCOIC of transportation for medical stuff. It was just crazy. So anyway, so fast forward a little bit about the girl I was telling you about.
Yeah.
So here I am. I come back home about a year after that. I'm in Walmart in Covington, Louisiana, and I run into her. And I was like, what you up to? So we kind of caught up for a minute. Well, next thing you know, about 3 weeks later, I get a call from the Tyra Banks show. and I knew Tyra was a model, but I didn't know she had a show.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I mean, I've been going, I didn't know anything.
Tyra Banks show?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
So,
really?
Yeah. So they called me up, and they said, hey, we want you to come on for a Valentine's Day special. You have an ex-girlfriend that wants to get back together with you. Well, I'm thinking, it's probably not this girl. It's probably the girl I literally just broke up with.
Yeah.
Her name was Michelle. She was from Long Island. Beautiful girl, man. Talk about a soulmate. But unfortunately, we ended up breaking up, and which ended up regret. So I'm thinking it's this girl calling to put me on the show.
It's got to be.
So I called my sister, and I'm like, hey. I was like, does Tyra Banks have a show? And she's like, yeah. I was like, for real? She's like, yeah. I said, okay, well, they call me. They want me to go with a person. And she goes, I'll go with you. So I said, okay. So we ended up going on this Tyra Banks show. And here I am at the hotel the night before, and they have some special on scotch, and I don't drink scotch. So her and I got totally wasted. We're drinking at like 2 o'clock in the morning in New York City. They were supposed to pick us up at 9 a.m. Well, the guy showed up at like 5:30. So we literally just went to bed.
Yeah.
So I'm still drunk, my sister's still drunk. So anyway, we had thrown our clothes. We got over there, And what I found out was they taped 3 shows a day, and we were the second show. So we're in this thing called a green room. Like, you got to kind of wait, you get dressed, you know, they kind of put some powder on you if you needed it. And so whatever. So here I am all hungover. So they bring me out of this room, and they said, look, we want you to stand and watch this monitor, okay? And then we were going to cue you to go on. I said, okay, that's cool. So I'm standing here about 2 foot away watching this little monitor for the first show ending. Well, I see this model promoting some kind of perfume. So that's all. I'm like, whatever, you know, she's doing her thing. Well, she has like these braided hair, like this braided dreadlocks thing. So anyway, she comes out. She stands between me and the monitor, facing the monitor. And I was like, what the fuck is she doing? I got all this space around me. What are you doing? So she turns around. She flings her hair all in my face. And she goes, what, you got a stay-on problem or something? Or something like that. And I was like, who the fuck are you? And she goes, I'm B. And I'm like, well, I'm T. What the fuck's that mean? You know, like, you know. So next thing you know, man. And I'm hungover, right? So this old black man comes over and he grabs me and he's like, hey, you need to calm down. You know, and all. I said, calm down. I said, she just slapped me in the face with her hair. You know, like, what are you talking about? So they all leave. This big entourage leaves. You know, I'm like, who the fuck's this model? Anyway, I didn't care. So I'm paying attention. So I'm asking this young guy. I'm like, so I'm about to go on next.
Yeah.
So I'm asking this young guy that works there. I'm like, hey, well, how do I go out there? You know, what do I do? He's like, man, walk out there like a GQ, you know. And I said, okay, well, you know, I'm not really a slave to fashion, so I'll listen to him. They call me out. They open the curtains. I walk out, and I'm like, hey, you know, how you doing? My sister's in the front row dying laughing. So I walk over, and I see it's this girl. And I was like, oh, the blonde.
Yeah.
Melanie. And I was like, oh, man, so you got to be kidding me. So I sit down, and Tyra's like, oh, you know, are you surprised that, you know, this girl wants you back? And I was like, I'm not getting back together with this girl. She's fucking crazy. I said, look, straight. So they went to commercial. They took a big commercial break and talked about, oh, it's a Valentine's Day special, 2010. You know, you can't, you know, you're not supposed to do it. You're supposed to agree to everything. And I said, no. I said, look, I'm telling you, this girl is crazy. Like, I am not, I thought it was another girl.
I'm not agreeing on TV to this chick.
Like,
ain't having it.
Yeah. So then she's like, well, we're going to give your sister all this free makeup. We're going to give you this new, that's when infrared grills came out.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to give you a brand new infrared grill. We're going to give you all these perks for showing up. And I was like, I really don't give a shit. You know, like, I really don't care. You know, like, I'm not really, like, into y'all's little game right now. Like, I just came back from overseas. I'm irritated. I'm hungover. So anyway, they took this big long break. They talked to me and ended up agreeing to it.
Okay.
So we go back on, and then she's like, you know, oh, how excited are you? I said, yeah, you know, I'm happy. I just totally played. Like, I was like the worst guy on there. And cause these other 2 couples were like, one of them almost died. He was in coma, and they all got together. It was all these beautiful stories. And I'm over here like, yeah, this bitch is crazy. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I agree. So I was like the worst person on the thing. So yeah, they agreed to pay for us to go to dinner and everything. So fast forward, so we finished the show.
Yeah.
We go back to the green room to change to get ready for the flight home. Well, that girl flung her face at me, told me she was B. She told me she was famous. So I'm still thinking she's a model.
Yeah.
Like she's a model or something. I've never heard of her, whoever the hell she is. So next thing you know, this big black guy comes in, and he's saying, you know, who's Terry? And I was like, I'm Terry. And he goes, man, you got into it with my girl. And I was like, well, who the fuck are you? I said, what you think, you famous too? He goes, I'm Jay-Z. And I was like, what the fuck's a Jay-Z? And I'm thinking, I've heard their music before, but I didn't know what they look like. Yeah. So as soon as I said that, I said, what are you, some kind of country singer or something? I was being a smartass. Yeah. Dude lost his shit. So then he starts yelling at me, starts arguing. I guess his girlfriend was Beyonce. Yeah. But I didn't know what Beyonce fucking looked like, you know? So anyway, my sister starts dying laughing. She's like, dude, stop.
You done got into it with Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Yeah. So they got me all separated. He got all these staff in there separating us. And they were like, you know, you need to apologize. And I was like, fuck them people. You know, like they started with me. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you're going to apologize. And I was like, yeah, see, you don't know who I am. I'm not apologizing to these people. So anyway, we fly home. Everything's fine. They ended up keeping the girl, but he gave my sister some makeup. They never did send me that damn girl, some bitches. But so it was like, it was 2010. So that's the year I got out the military. Yeah. So yeah, I really wasn't having it. But that was a pretty interesting career, though, I tell you. But even now, though, you know, today, so like I'm a commander of a VFW Post. I'm a district commander. But my main mission is to give back, you know, still give back. Because I know there's a lot of veterans out there that don't know how to file the paperwork. And right now, it's so difficult because all the forms have changed. Everything's updating all the time. And if you don't do a supplemental claim instead of this or that, you know, like they're going to deny you. And I tell you, it's so difficult now to get this. But I'm a big advocate, you know, for veterans and for youth organizations, things like that. And, you know, we deal with a lot of veterans that obviously passed away. Yeah. And it's difficult. But, you know, a lot of us, like me, I hate funerals, you know, but a lot of us try to stick around and do the best we can. But, you know, I know how hard it is out there. I know how hard the struggle is. I know how easy it is to
No,
give
I mean,
up.
the struggle's real.
Yeah, it's definitely real. It's definitely real. And, you know, and I still struggle to this day, you know, with some of the memories and certain things. But people don't get it. You know, it seems
Well,
like...
and then the other thing with struggling and people don't get it, they also, like, since I started this podcast, I get this question from anybody who actually listens, and everybody who actually listens has asked me this. Do I regret my service because of the demons that I have now and what I did? And it's like...
It's a great internal conflict. It really is. You know, I've always told people that I still would go back and do it.
Over and over again.
But obviously, it was more for the camaraderie, you know, more for the camaraderie and cohesion you had with your units.
Well, that's the part I miss. But
yeah. But, yeah, as far as if it's worth it, probably not. I mean, because, I mean, some soldiers, I mean, they really, you know, they break, you know, and it's a fine line between...
For some of them, for some people, it's probably not worth it. You're right.
Yeah.
For some people.
Yeah. But again, I've always looked at kind of like the bigger picture of it all. So in the bigger picture of it all, yes, I would do it again.
Yeah.
Because I felt like we were really doing a justified thing at the time. The problem was, though, is the longer you stay in country and the stuff that you see that's going on is very shady.
Yes.
You know, it's very shady. And you know, it's like we used to see these big black plastic pallets. They used to fly in. There was 6 or 7 of them a couple times a month. And when we found out, it was cash. You know, we're flying in cash from Treasury to hand out to the locals, you know. So, like, you know, if you hurt their son or, you know, hurt their daughter, you got to give them cash, you know, more money than they ever seen in their life. And it's like, and Afghanistan was the same way. They fly these pallets in there and they pay off tribes and they pay off these people. But the soldiers making, you know, if you really look down for the hours that we put in, you probably make it $2 an hour, $3 an hour, you know, while you're over there. I mean, it was just insane, man. And then you have a guy driving a bus on base making $20,000 a month, you know. But no, the long-term effects, which to me the worst part was how the Army discards you once you get injured.
Yeah.
Once something goes wrong with you, medically or mentally, that's it. I mean, they discard you.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to continue your service, you have to hide the fact of you having these ailments, which is crazy.
It's true. Yep.
And then
just to keep your clearance, yeah.
The ethos that you're brought into from the very beginning, even going through training, you know, like if you were to say, hey, this hurts or whatever, well, you'd get cycled back and stay in training longer. So you're basically from day one trained to just go through the pain. Hey, take extra this, take extra that, and go through. Yeah. You know, and
it's true.
that is the ethos and the mentality of you while you're in is to just grind and go through.
It's true. Well, one thing I also noticed too is like when you return back from your combat deployment and you're back home within like a week, it's like they don't teach because you're still like on edge. You know,
by far.
You still have like this heightened awareness, you know, and all your sensors are still kind of like at peak level. And when you get home, you're still like you hear noise at night. It gets too quiet. You hear noise. You're always checking your window locks, your door locks, and all that. I mean, I did that forever, man. It seemed like a year or two I did that. And it's like until I was finally able to kind of come down off of it. And it's like, why doesn't the military have something to kind of help you decompress in a way?
I don't know. And we've been fighting wars for so long. Why is the VFW not came up with some type of protocol to assist in all the warriors coming back? You know what I mean? Like, why?
Yeah. No, I
mean, we're proud to say it's been around for 125 years, but I don't know why.
Well, so when you go back to the history of the VFW, I really understand why they did it. You know, like they wanted to get together with camaraderie ship, and they wanted to, you know, because back then they weren't paying them their pensions, and they weren't paying, you know, so they got together and really did some stuff. Now, I'm telling you, in my opinion, and I've been around the VFW for about, since 2005, I think.
Yeah.
These guys in D.C. that work for the VFW, unfortunately, some of them are just out of tune, out of touch.
And it's because they've been in position too long, the same as like congressmen and senators and everything else. They you know, they ride these contracts out for so long. And I mean, that's getting completely political about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know where the change needs to be happening, but I'm hoping that, you know, podcasts can shine some light on it, that we can shine some light on it, that we can create a network for all these people who are struggling and help them get to the resources they need.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think what I wish that we had, like the DAV, for example, they train veteran service officers. Like if you're in the DAV, you know, if you want to become a service officer, they want to train anybody.
That's awesome.
You know? And then the VFW has service officers in our post, but the VFW doesn't give you training for it. They want you to go see one of their people in the parish it's dealing with hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And they got 5 minutes for you.
Yeah.
And it's like they're not really helping you, get all your paperwork together. They're just following like kind of what you bring in. If you're missing something, they pretty much don't tell you what you need to get.
Is there some way for us to piggyback off the fact of making an actual veteran service officer, right? And basically buying a life membership for them in the DAV and sending them to that training so they can then, like, you're part of both. You went through them for the training, but yet you're the veteran service officer for this VFW.
Yeah,
I've got a life membership in the DAV. I bought life memberships in almost everything just because of how important veteran organizations are once I did the research and figured it out, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, get attached to all of them, throw your life memberships in there, throw them their little bit of money, and go on about your business, right?
Yeah.
So if different ones are providing different opportunities, we take advantage of those opportunities because that's the one thing they're good at. So we take advantage of that opportunity and bring it where we need to bring it.
Yeah. I think a good compromise with the VFW would be if on every district level, because each state, they have so many districts, but if it's the district, instead of the post, because there's too many posts.
That's way too many posts. You're right.
So if on the district level, if the state was able, maybe the VFW national can even help compensate some, maybe split the cost, but have a district service officer.
Yeah.
That way they can answer questions for the post. You can go to them. Not exactly on scale as the DAV, but at least we have somebody on the district level that we can go and we can talk to outside of this guy that the VSO is going to give you 5 minutes because he has hundreds of, appointments. So, look, I even had one VSO
unless you drive to the right parish where the VSO is sitting around and has nothing to do.
That's right. And then typically the ones that are really bored, they really don't keep up with very much, I found out, with all the changes. The guys that are real busy, they keep up with all that stuff because they're interacting with all these different scenarios, so they're asking questions. So, it's just weird. And then the accountability, too, on the VSOs. I had a stepdaughter moved in at 19, married this woman. Her stepdaughter moved in California. So at the time, I'm on 100% individual unemployability. So in this state of Louisiana, if you're on that, the daughter gets free tuition. Okay, but you got to go to a VSO to verify that you're 100% IU or 100% connected. So I'm bringing her there. I'm sitting down, tell this guy what I wanted, this VS officer what I wanted, about this college thing to verify me. So I get up and go get a cup of coffee right outside of his door. It takes me like 2 minutes. I come back in, and my stepdaughter's crying her eyes out. And I was like, damn. I said, dude, so what'd you do to this girl? He said, I was just telling her when she goes to college how much sex is going to hurt. I said, you son of a bitch. Well, I found out everybody knows he's an asshole, but he's so good at getting everybody's benefits, they just put up with it. And I was like, that's bullshit. So many people has complained and reported this guy, but they don't do nothing to him because I guess he works for cheap. I don't know what it was, but he's been there forever.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, this is a shame. So veterans got to deal with that shit too. It's just no accountability. And I don't understand that. And I hear this a lot. I hear a lot of horror stories about VSOs that are appointed by the VFW in the state. Even though the state of Louisiana pays for these VSOs, and I think the VFW provides the training, there needs to be more accountability on their part too. Because some of them are just horrible.
A lot of them are. Yeah.
And
a lot of them are. A lot of them, they've got nothing going on. They want you to come back, make an appointment. It's just there's
like
a lot
numbers
of
thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So if you do it on the district level with the VFW, they're all volunteers. So I think their heart's going to be more into it. They don't have to deal with hundreds of people. They just have to deal with their district members that have questions. And then they, in turn, can train us on the post level, what to look for and what resources are available and all that. So I'm not sure why the VFW really hasn't kind of invested more into these service officers in our states, because these days, the biggest thing you hear at the VFW is how do we recruit new members, these younger people. And I'm telling you, the number one way that I recruit people in my post is by offering assistance to put together their packets for them to go see a VSO. Yeah. So they need something. They want something. They need your help, at that point, because they can't navigate the VA system. So if you offer help, which directly impacts them, because they don't want to come to your family days and all that, but they want help. And then after you help them get their benefits, it's like they're more willing to, provide time, maybe, help with a bingo project or community service project or something like that. It works as a really good recruitment tool.
Yeah.
But me not being able to pick up the phone and call a VSO to ask questions to, like on a district level or something like that, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So I always have to send them to a local person that's 50-50.
Well, I mean, just still continuing getting the same training that they get, so we're aware of what's going on. I mean, I'd sit through the 2-hour class on the training of what happens with this, how to do that, all the other different stuff. I mean, I don't need the certification and the rubber stamp saying I'm a VSO. Send me to the training.
Well, so I want to say 12, 13 years ago on the VFW site, they used to have all these videos on how to become a veteran service officer.
Yeah.
They had all these training, and it was amazing, and I watched all of them. But for whatever reason, they took them away. As far as I know, I can't find them anymore. Not all of them. They don't have a complete set. And I never understood that, because it's like, this is good information to be handed out to our members. So like, I don't know where they hit it, because you can search for it, but it's really hard to find each individual lesson.
Yeah.
But before, it was just all laid out, like an order, and it was just so easy for your service officer to go online and study these things and realize, okay, well, we have these resources, and you can reach out here for this and that for that, but whatever, they took it away. Yeah. I don't know if it's a liability thing. I have no idea. But the VFW needs to catch up on that.
You're saying 12 years ago, so, a lot of stuff's changed in the last 12 years with the paperwork, the form, and all the other, and I don't understand why, but, a lot of stuff's changed, but once again, technology is simple. I made a QR code to get to the YouTube page that we've got this podcast on, and it seems to work for most people. But everything worth doing takes a lot of effort to make happen, and you have to find somebody passionate to do that amount of effort. And you're passionate to your point of helping people and doing this, but you've got to find enough people who are passionate enough to push a project to the next level.
Well, I agree, and that's why I kind of respect the way the DAV does it, because you have these volunteers that join the DAV, and as volunteers, they don't want to do it professionally for money, but they want to learn so they can get back to their local veterans.
Yeah.
I have a retired first sergeant that moved from Washington State down to Louisiana, and that's all he does, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. He'll go and drive and meet veterans and help them do their paperwork and everything, but he went through the DAV to get the training. And I'm like, man, that's amazing. We have people on our post that are willing to do that. They're willing to get that training just to help people in the local area, but the VFW doesn't offer that. Now, technically, because I know this has always been the big pushback, technically anybody can take the test. So as long as they approve it, you got to fill out a form to the VA. As long as they approve it, you can go in and take the test. I think you're supposed to have a sponsor. So if you're a lawyer, automatically you get approved, obviously. If you're a lawyer, because you know how to do research. But if you're just a civilian and you want to take the VSO test, you could take the test. As long I forget the questions on it. I looked at the form many years ago, but it was like you got to be a good moral character. You got to do all this, So they kind of want to make sure that you're actually a good person that's going to sign up for this. But they don't hold any accountability to it, because I've seen it.
Yeah.
But it's just a shame, though, that the VFW doesn't offer that training to where we can go take those tests and get certified.
Maybe that's some of the very basic stuff that we can push for that makes post better.
Yeah, but you're right, though.
And you're in a position of leadership. I haven't been around the VFW very long, but everybody I run into has their own passions, and it seems like a great organization, and there's definitely amazing things about it. And it's good to know that there's people in leadership positions who want to make things better and not are okay with what the status quo is.
Yeah, you're right. But some of the mentality definitely needs to change. Some things the VFW just not budge on, but I'd say overall, I agree. 90% of what the VFW is amazing.
Yeah,
they really help a lot of people. But they're always asking for obviously donations and money, and when you die, you give them your house and all this. But when a post has an issue, like say hurricane comes through and wipes out your cook shed where you cook for the community during hurricanes.
Yeah.
You could apply. They might give you $1,000, $1,500. But they got all this money they're sitting on, but they're not even willing to help you reinvest. To get your post up.
Yeah.
Because some posters can't afford it. Like we do bingo. Some of them have bars. But the posts who can afford it obviously pay for it. But the ones that can't, that are doing good with the community and don't have more than like 100 members, 80 members, they can't afford a big construction project. And then when you ask them for money, they're like, "Oh, we'll give you $1,000." And it's like, man, like we cook for the community with this. Like why isn't our grant a little higher? Or something like that. Like something way, because you can look at their books. They have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But my thing is though is help the post out, not 100%. Maybe give them a loan or just something like that where they can pay back.
Well, but the same thing is the amount of people and the amount of stuff we have and the amount of experts that you have that come across all the different job fields and everything else. There's got to be somewhere where in the country we've got somebody who's a veteran and they own this company that could come in and put up metal buildings for you and do all these other different things at the post, and you're able to compensate them accordingly with all the tax write-offs and everything else for them doing these services, and they've already got it. They're just somebody isn't communicating the fact that they exist, that they're there.
That's right.
Well,
and that's true. And sometimes, like with the VA, they'll give them a ton of information on resources for the veterans in the local area. The problem is, though, is nobody's getting that information. I mean, you might have a handful of people that get it, but the way they disseminate it is not even. It's not even. It's just like when the government wants to recognize veterans in the community, and they don't even contact the American Legion, the DAV, or the VFW. And it's like, what do you mean? Like,
What do you mean you're trying to contact the veterans, but yet you're not going to reach out to all your local posts to get the names of those veterans?
Yeah. Or give them the information you were just given.
Yeah.
It is a huge breakdown in communication overall. And it's a shame because I read things online that I never would have found out unless I researched it.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because there's so many resources out there.
Well, and then there's so many benefits that are out there that you have no idea about.
Yeah. And how are you supposed to know? Because even the little book the VA gives you, it's a watered down version of everything that they have.
Yeah.
So how it's like when you go to court and the judge says, well, ignorance of the law is no excuse. But it's like if there's resource, I'm not saying like you got to get a law degree, but in this case, though, why can't the VA actually show us?
It seems like you have to have one to be able to do the research, analyze, and come up with what the hell you got and figure it out.
Well, look, when I studied those Code of Federal Relations for those 6-7 months, I literally had to look up definitions of words. I mean, some of it is really legal jargon, and you really had to look up like what they meant by it. So there's no way that a regular veteran is going to understand this.
So you want to write this in legal jargon, but yet whenever I'm working on an aircraft, you dumb the manual down to an 8th grade level? The hell's the fucking difference here? Where's the disconnect?
And look, the power that the VA has is also ridiculous.
Yes.
About 6 years ago, so I was on individual unemployability at the time. And a lot of people think because it says individual unemployability that you can't work. So basically, to water it down, what it works is like, let's say you have individual unemployment because of a back injury.
Okay.
Well, you can't have a job digging ditches.
Yeah.
But you can make up. I think it's like $1,300 or $1,400 a month. Okay, that you can make in addition to your IU. Okay, just like Social Security disability, you can still work on it, but you can't go against your disability.
Yeah.
So if you have PTSD, for example, I've never heard of any work restriction that you can have. And there's another way, like there's I forget what they call it, but it's like if you work for like a family member, they make up a job for you, then you can make pretty much whatever you want. So I'm doing a job, I'm doing this decorative concrete job, and I think I made like $600 off of it. I go and cash the check comes back, flags it because they see that I'm on IU. So this VA investigator out of Jackson, Mississippi, comes and he says, he investigates me and he goes, look, we got pictures of you working and all this, you're on unemployability, you can't work at all. And I was like, well, sir, that's not correct. I can work as long as I'm not working against my disability. And he's like, oh, you're full of shit and blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking he's going to go back to his office and he's going to look up the regulation and leave me alone. Nope. He shows up about a month later, and I get a letter in the mail from the compensation director in New Orleans saying that my benefits are suspended while I'm under investigation. So I'm like, well, what the shit is this? I wasn't even charged. I wasn't arrested. I wasn't nothing. What do you mean my benefits are suspended? So the investigation now taking 18 months. And then the guy, the investigator, the IG guy, turns in my paperwork to the Eastern District of New Orleans to try to charge me on like wire fraud, theft, and all this shit, whatever. Wants me to back pay $200-something thousand and all this crap. So all my benefits, education benefits, everything. So I get a lawyer, and I have this one page of this regulation that shows on IU how you can work. So she gives it to the district attorney guy. He gives it back to the investigator. The investigator comes back and he says, oh, I didn't know anything about this. So during this time, 18 months, I had to file bankruptcy. I couldn't afford my bills. My autistic daughter lost everything.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford for her to get therapy anymore. My wife got deported to Canada because she was going through immigration at the time.
Yeah.
And I guess she was part of this fraud. So anyway, they kicked her out. So I ended up reporting a harassment case on the guy. And the guy shows up and he's like, we're going to show up with 11 agents. We're going to arrest you. I said, man, please arrest me. Please arrest me. And he goes, why would you want to be arrested? I said, because then I'll have due process. This is how much power they have to cut your benefits off just because you're accused of a crime.
Yep.
Now, I heard in the last 2 or 3 years, they can't do that no more. They can't just automatically spend it. They got to go off your tax returns, whatever it is. But I don't even know if that's true. But I met the compensation director in New Orleans through a VFW thing about 3 years ago. And I asked him, I said, why would you agree to cut a veteran's benefits because he's accused of a crime?
Yeah.
He goes, we get those requests all the time, so we just grant them. I said, but there's no evidence saying the veteran did anything wrong. You just blanketly disapprove me. He said, yeah. And I said, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. So you're going to cut my benefits without even me being charged with a crime and have no evidence against me that I did anything wrong, and you're just going to agree to it. And I told the guy, I said, obviously you're not a veteran. He said, no, I'm not. And I was like, but they put you as a compensation director. Just blew my mind. And then finally they say Congress changed the rules. So I imagine this had to happen to hundreds or maybe even thousands of veterans. If you're accused of a crime.
And somebody had to blow the whistle and cause as much chaos as you did.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
And you talk about make your PTSD.
Oh, everything.
Anxiety.
Everything goes through the charts, you know? I mean,
you cut off your income. I mean, it's just insane.
I'm upset when somebody scams me out of a couple $100 because it's something stupid or something's broken or the kids need this or the kids need that. And I mean, I make good money, you know?
It's a damn shame, that veterans can get all that taken away from without no due process. So I'm just telling you, it's insane what the government can do to you. So obviously that's why a lot of people don't come forward, I think. And a lot of veterans are afraid to push the system. Well, they know what could happen to you.
But that's where letting VSOs, veteran service organizations, know about what's going on and bringing it to the forefront, it gives them the voice to help make something happen. You know what I mean? Like maybe you and me individually, we can be a Karen and raise a fuss, but whenever we bring it forward with a VSO, the American Legion's got some weight. The Veterans of Foreign War have some weight. Yeah. And talking to our congressmen and talking to our senators and, taking care of that on the local levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, even to me, when I think back to it, when I met that battalion commander when I was in the VA hospital, he filled out a form that said I needed to get a PEB and MEB, right? So I had this form, and I remember when I talked to the retention NCO, I was like, so what do I do with this? Am I going to get med boarded? Yeah. And they're like, no. And that was the final decision. I should have got med boarded.
Wow.
And what I found out, we had this St. Tammany Parish, they're like counties, we have a parish over St. Tammany Parish. They had this military advisory committee, and all the veterans were supposed to attend the community. Well, there was a warrant officer, an active duty warrant officer that showed up, and very professional. And at the end of the meeting, she asked everyone to raise their hand if you were a National Guard or reservist who got injured but didn't get med boarded. So a few of us raised our hands, and I talked to her after the meeting, and I said, I see you're doing this survey. How's it turning out? She goes, well, look, there was thousands of y'all this happened to. The Army's just doing a survey.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what's going to happen with this? She goes, I don't know. We're just doing a survey. And I was like, what? And nothing ever came of it.
Yeah.
Nothing ever came of it. They didn't look back at us and say, well, you have these orders that said, you need a med board.
Well, and then you've got all these people filing for disability, and it's all coming in, and there's got to be a better way. All right. Well, we're at 46 minutes. You got any final words of wisdom?
Well, I tell y'all, if you don't belong to a veteran organization, I would highly recommend it. Even though they can offer you a little bit of guidance, I guarantee you it's going to be better guidance than what you get now. And then ask the right questions. And if you have good leadership at that organization, like the VFW, American Legion, or DAV, at least you're going to be able to point you in the right direction. They might not know everything, but they can at least point you in the right direction. And the VFW is a great organization overall. They really are. But like every organization, every big organization, there's things that just gotta, kind of tweak and kind of get right. But these younger veterans like us, I think, are sounding the alarm on a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's why we have so many more benefits now post 9/11
of course
than veterans before us. So we just got to keep up the good fight. And if y'all get an email or y'all get a Facebook thing that says, hey, support this cause for a veteran cause, please support it. Because that's our voice. That's the veterans' voices to help each other. Even if it doesn't apply to you, but it's a good bill, please support it. Okay, please support it because this is how we're getting things done. Things are getting changed. In fact, the Headsmith guy, the new Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Defense, right? Headsmith, whatever his name is, he was a military Army guy, right?
Okay, yeah, Headsmith.
They just approved him today. Now, he's a military guy, but he wasn't like some 4-star general. But his charities and everything, he deals with veterans on the ground, so he sees all these issues. So I really have a positive outlook at him, hopefully working with the VA guy that's coming in, and to where they can really make a huge difference and kind of cut through the red tape.
Yeah.
And just kind of streamline these things. And hopefully the VFW jumps on board soon and can actually start giving our districts and our states some more training and kind of using DAV kind of as a model, because there's so much stuff that's changed and there's so much out there. We need to get this information.
Well, I mean, like I was saying before, just piggyback off of them as a model. Fuck, if it's cheaper to buy us a life membership in the DAV and send us over there for the training, we use the training over here, do it.
Yeah.
If they've already got, don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Use the damn wheel that's over there.
But we need the numbers too, though.
Oh, we need the numbers. We need the numbers.
I hate to say it, but the more people that join these veteran organizations, the more representation we have in Congress and the Senate. So please do it. It's like $30 a year most of the time for these little organizations, but it gives us a big voice.
It does.
So please help support us. And I love every one of you. men and women. So thank y'all for your service too. I'm sure y'all got crazy stories too of the service, but thank you for listening to mine, and God bless every one of you.
I hear you. Well, thank you for coming on, man. Iron sharpens iron.
If you need more information on veterans benefits, please visit our website at VFW-Post-4224.org. That's Victor Foxtrot Whiskey, Post-4224.org. All of our contact information is in the description of the video. Please email us if you have any questions.
Ethos of Silence.
A veteran podcast aims to amplify the voices of veterans, creating a safe space for authentic conversations about their experiences, challenges, and triumphs. We seek to break the stigma surrounding mental health and foster community support, resilience, and understanding. Through storytelling, expert insights, and candid discussions, we strive to inspire healing, promote awareness, and empower veterans on their journeys.
Welcome